Nurse Kestex's 4 appendages moved with practiced efficiency across the medical bay's control panel. Today marked their 15th cycle as head nurse on Station Omega-7, and they took pride in having treated patients from 37 different species without a single mishap. The gentle hum of medical scanners and the soft blue lighting created the perfectly sterile environment they preferred. Incoming patient alert. The station's AI announced. Human diplomatic personnel. Initial physical examination required. Kestex's outer membrane rippled with excitement. Humans. The station had only opened its doors to Earth's diplomatic corps last week, and this would be their first human patient. They had studied the basic briefing materials, of course, but actual hands-on experience with a new species was always exciting. The medical bay doors slid open with a soft hiss. A human male walked in, dressed in the standard gray diplomatic uniform. According to the hovering medical display, his name was John Chen, age 34 Earth years. "Good morning," John said, smiling. "I'm here for my mandatory physical." Kestex activated their universal translator. "Greetings, Diplomatic Representative Chen. Please position yourself on the examination platform." They gestured toward the floating medical bed with their upper right appendage. John nodded and lay down on the platform. Kestex initiated the standard scanning sequence, their 4 eyes focused on the incoming data streams. The first reading seemed normal enough. A carbon-based life form with iron-based blood transportation. But then, Kestex's eyes widened. They adjusted the scanner settings and ran the sequence again. The results came back identical. "Representative Chen," Kestex said carefully, their translator struggling to maintain a professional tone. "Are you experiencing any discomfort or unusual sensations in your lower abdominal region?" John raised an eyebrow. "No, I feel perfectly fine." "Why do you ask?" Kestex's membrane changed to a concerned shade of purple. The scanners were showing what appeared to be significant tissue formations that didn't match any of the standard human medical documents they had studied. Could this be some kind of rapid onset condition that occurred in space? "Please remain still," they instructed, activating the more detailed molecular scanning array. The new readings only increased their concern. There appeared to be specialized tissue structures that the scanner's medical database couldn't properly categorize. "Is everything okay?" John asked, noticing the nurse's changing colors. "I believe we should consult with Chief Medical Officer Scifi," Kestex said, trying to keep their voice steady. They didn't want to alarm the human, but this seemed far outside their experience. Their appendages moved quickly across the emergency communication panel. "CMO Scifi to Medical Bay 3. Urgent consultation required." While waiting for the Chief Medical Officer, Kestex continued to monitor the readings. The apparent anomaly wasn't spreading, at least. The human seemed completely unconcerned, which was either a very good sign or a very bad one. In their experience, either patients were panicking over nothing, or they were dangerously unaware of serious conditions. "I really feel fine," John insisted, starting to look slightly worried himself. "This is just a routine physical for station residency approval." "Of course, Representative Chen. We simply wish to be thorough. This is our first time treating a human patient, after all." Kestex's membrane was now cycling through shades of purple and blue, a sign of professional concern among their species. The medical bay doors opened again, and Chief Medical Officer Scifi glided in, their tentacles arranged in a formal medical consultation pattern. Kestex quickly transferred the scan results to the main display. "Now then," Scifi said, their translator set to a soothing frequency, "what seems to be the—" They stopped mid-sentence, all 6 eyes fixed on the scan results. After a moment of silence, they turned to Kestex. "You were right to call me. I've never seen readings quite like these." John Chen sat up on the examination platform, looking back and forth between the 2 alien medical professionals. Would someone please tell me what's going on? Chief Medical Officer Tlaxvia floated closer to the medical displays, their tentacles twisting in complex patterns that indicated deep concentration. The scan results hung in the air as shimmering holograms, casting a soft blue glow across the medical bay. How long have you had this condition, Representative Chen? Tlaxvia asked, trying to sound casual while their medical training screamed that this was anything but normal. John sat up straighter on the examination platform. What condition? I feel perfectly healthy. I just need a routine physical for my diplomatic clearance. Nurse Kestex's membrane flickered anxiously as they pulled up the standard human medical reference documents. According to our basic files, there's no mention of such tissue formations being normal for humans. Perhaps, Tlaxvia suggested carefully, we should call in Dr. Zixex from Level 4. They specialize in unusual growth patterns. Before John could protest, 3 more alien medical professionals had rushed into the bay, drawn by the unusual readings showing up on the station's medical network. Dr. Veen, a tall, spider-like being with advanced degrees in xenobiology, clicked their mandibles thoughtfully while studying the scans. Fascinating, Dr. Veen said. The tissue density suggests some sort of specialized organ system, but the placement is most unusual. I really don't understand what's going on here, John said, starting to feel like a lab specimen. Could someone please explain what you're all looking at? The medical professionals exchanged glances, or whatever passed for glances among their various species. Tlaxvia's tentacles twisted into what the medical staff recognized as their lecture position. Representative Chen, they began diplomatically, we're detecting what appears to be an unusual formation of specialized tissue in your lower abdominal region. The structure doesn't match any of our reference materials for human anatomy. John blinked. Could you be more specific about where exactly you're seeing this unusual formation? Kistex helpfully highlighted the area on the holographic display. John stared at it for a moment. Then his eyes widened with sudden understanding. A slight blush crept across his face. Oh no, that's not. That's completely normal. That's just, John struggled to find a professional way to explain basic human biology to the concerned alien medical staff. Normal. Tlaxvia's tentacles curled in surprise. Our records don't indicate any such structures in the standard human anatomical guides. Someone really should update those guides, John muttered. Listen, I need to contact the Human Medical Liaison Office. They can explain everything. But the alien medical staff was already deep in professional discussion. Dr. Veen had pulled up comparative anatomical charts from 17 different species, none of which showed similar formations. Kestex was frantically searching through the station's medical database for any precedent. A new doctor, this one appearing to be made mostly of floating crystals, had joined the growing consultation. The density readings are quite unusual, the crystal doctor chimed melodiously. Perhaps we should consider quarantine protocols. No quarantine, John said quickly, reaching for his communicator. This is just a simple misunderstanding about human biological differences. Tlaxvia raised their primary tentacles in a calming gesture. Representative Chen, please remain calm. We're simply trying to ensure your well-being. Dr. Zixex will be here shortly with their specialized scanning equipment. John buried his face in his hands, his ears turning red. What had started as a routine physical was quickly turning into an interstellar incident. In the corner, Kistex was now comparing the readings to various known parasitic life forms, their membranes cycling through worried shades of blue and purple. Is it growing? One of the newer doctors whispered, causing several of the medical staff to float back a cautious distance. That's it, John said firmly, finally managing to activate his communicator. I'm calling Dr. Martinez from the Human Medical Office. She can sort this out. The medical bay was getting crowded. 8 different alien doctors now floated, stood, or hovered around John Chen's examination platform. The station's xenobiologist specialist, Dr. Still, had just arrived carrying what looked like a stack of ancient data crystals. "I brought every historical text we have on human biology," Dr. Still announced, their crystalline body gleaming under the medical bay lights. "Though I must admit, most are from old Earth entertainment broadcasts we received before official first contact." John groaned. "Please don't tell me you're basing your medical knowledge on old TV shows." Dr. Kickstill carefully inserted one of the crystals into the medical bay's computer. A series of images appeared in the air, showing various human medical diagrams. Unfortunately, they appeared to be from children's educational programs. "According to these records," Dr. Kickstill said seriously, "humans should be much more simplified in their internal structure." "Those are cartoons," John tried to explain. "They're not meant to be accurate. Look, humans have two biological varieties, and I'm just—" The medical eyes translation system interrupted him. "Warning. Unknown terminology detected. Closest translation. Inflammatory growth pattern variant." This sent the medical staff into another flurry of activity. Chief Medical Officer Talaxvia's tentacles twisted into increasingly complex knots of concern. "Did you say inflammatory?" Nurse Kistix's membrane turned an alarming shade of green. "The tissue formation is caused by inflammation." "No, that's not what I meant," John said quickly. "The translator isn't working properly. I'm trying to explain that humans come in two different." Alert. Detecting possible spread of anomalous tissue readings, the medical eye announced helpfully. The crystal doctor chimed in alarm. "Spread. We must contain this immediately." Dr. Veen's spider-like form scuttled to the computer console. "I'm pulling up every reference to human biological variations we have." The screen filled with more images, these ones from old human movies and TV shows that had reached the station years ago. "Oh no," John muttered, seeing the collection of completely inaccurate medical scenes from various science fiction shows. "Those aren't real either." Kistex was now frantically searching the galactic medical database. "There's very little official information about human biological variations. Could this be some sort of metamorphosis?" According to these entertainment records, Dr. Kextil noted, studying an old soap opera, humans can experience dramatic physical changes during certain emotional states. "Those are special effects." John was fighting the urge to laugh and scream at the same time. "None of that is real." The medical eye continued to make things worse. Translation update. Patient describes condition as natural variant of species. Closest medical terminology. Spontaneous genetic divergence with physical manifestation. This sent the entire medical staff into a new wave of panic. The words genetic and spontaneous were never good when used together. "Station-wide containment protocols may be necessary," Talaxvia said gravely. "If humans can spontaneously develop new genetic variations." "No, please." John reached again for his communicator, which had been having trouble connecting to the human medical office. "This is all a huge misunderstanding. Every human has specific biological." The medical eye cheerfully translated. "Patient describes universal condition affecting all humans. Warning. Possible pandemic alert." That did it. The station's main medical alert system activated with a loud whoop, and red warning lights began flashing throughout the medical bay. "Emergency quarantine protocols initiated," announced the station eye in a calm voice. John fell back on the examination platform with a groan. Somewhere in the station, he knew Dr. Martinez from the human medical office was probably getting the alert right now. He just hoped she would get here before the alien medical staff decided to put the entire human diplomatic corps into quarantine. "Don't worry, Representative Chen," Kestek said soothingly, all 4 appendages ready with various medical instruments. "We'll figure out what's happening to your species." The station's quarantine alert echoed through every corridor of Omega-7. Red emergency lights pulsed in steady rhythm, casting strange shadows as medical staff of various species rushed back and forth outside the sealed medical bay. Inside, John Chen had given up trying to explain human biology. He lay on the examination platform, watching with a mixture of amusement and horror as the situation spiraled further out of control. Update from station security, the AI announced. All human diplomatic personnel have been confined to their quarters for medical observation. Chief Medical Officer Talaxvia's tentacles were now tied in so many knots that they looked like a sailor's practice rope. Have any other humans reported similar conditions? Through the medical bay's transparent walls, John could see other members of the human diplomatic team trying to get in. Ambassador Sarah Thompson was at the front, her face red as she attempted to explain something to the security guards. The guards, a species that looked like walking sea anemones, waved their defensive tendrils nervously. Meanwhile, Nurse Kestex had discovered human medical websites on the galactic net. Unfortunately, they had started with WebMD. According to this human medical database, Kestex announced, their membrane turning pale with concern. These symptoms could indicate 47 different serious conditions. Dr. Veen clicked their mandibles anxiously. But which one is it? The site suggests everything from minor inflammation to immediate emergency surgery. Surgery. John sat up quickly. Nobody is doing any surgery. I just need Dr. Martins to explain. The patient is becoming agitated, the crystal doctor chimed worriedly. Should we administer calming agents? No calming agents, John protested. I'm not agitated, I'm just. The medical AI helpfully translated. Patient showing signs of emotional distress. Possible correlation with tissue anomaly. This sent the medical team into another frenzy of activity. Dr. Kixtill began pulling up more entertainment videos, now showing dramatic scenes from human medical shows. According to these historical records, they reported seriously. Human medical emergencies often involve a lot of running around and shouting "stiati" at each other. Several of the younger medical staff immediately began rushing around the room yelling "state" in various alien accents. Through the windows, John could see Ambassador Thompson face-palming. Next to her, the station's security chief, a being made mostly of floating geometric shapes, was trying to organize a containment perimeter. Perhaps we should consult the Galactic Medical Ethics Board, Talaxvia suggested, their tentacles somehow finding new ways to twist anxiously. Kistex had moved on to reading human anatomy websites, but their translator was making things even more confusing. This site mentions something called the birds and bees, but I don't detect any flying creatures in the scan results. John buried his face in his hands. That's just a saying. It's how humans explain. Alert. The medical eye interrupted. Patient mentioning undetected flying organisms. Possible hallucination symptoms. Outside the medical bay, more humans had gathered. Some were trying not to laugh, while others were attempting to explain things to the increasingly confused security staff. One young diplomat was actually recording the whole thing on his phone. Breaking news. The station's information system announced. Medical emergency declared on Station Omega 7. All non-essential personnel please remain in designated safe zones. Human diplomatic corps under medical observation for possible spontaneous genetic condition. Oh God, John muttered. This is going to end up on the galactic news, isn't it? Don't worry, Kistik said reassuringly, patting John's shoulder with a gentle appendage. I found another human medical reference. According to this Gray's Anatomy historical document, we should be having romantic relationships while dealing with this crisis. That's a TV show, John exclaimed. It's not real medicine. Just then, the medical bay doors slid open with an emergency override, and Dr. Sarah Martinez from the human medical office rushed in, took one look at the chaos, and burst out laughing. Dr. Sarah Martinez needed several minutes to stop laughing. The human medical officer leaned against the doorframe of the medical bay, wiping tears from her eyes, while the assembled alien medical staff watched in confusion. Doctor, this is a serious medical situation, Chief Medical Officer Talaxvia said, their tentacles twisted into what they hoped was a stern pattern. We have a possible pandemic of spontaneous genetic. This set Dr. Martinez off into another fit of laughter. Behind her, the other human diplomatic staff who had finally gained entry were also struggling to keep straight faces. Only Ambassador Thompson managed to maintain a somewhat diplomatic expression. "Oh my goodness," Dr. Martinez finally managed to say, straightening her medical coat. "This is going to be the best story at the next Interstellar Medical Conference." Nurse Kestex's membrane shifted to a confused shade of yellow. "You seem unusually happy about a medical emergency." "Because it's not an emergency at all," Dr. Martinez explained. Walking over to the medical displays, she glanced at the scan results and bit her lip to keep from laughing again. "What you're seeing is completely normal human anatomy." "Normal?" Dr. Veen's mandibles clicked rapidly in surprise. "But our reference materials are obviously incomplete," Dr. Martinez said diplomatically. She turned to address the whole medical staff. "I think it's time for an emergency lecture on basic human biology." John Chen finally relaxed on the examination platform. "Thank goodness. Can I leave now?" "Actually," Dr. Martinez said, "would you mind staying? You can help me explain human biological diversity to our colleagues." The next 20 minutes turned into an impromptu medical education session. As Dr. Martinez explained basic human biology, the alien medical staff's various appendages, membranes, and crystalline surfaces displayed a fascinating range of colors indicating embarrassment, surprise, and understanding. "You mean all humans have these variations?" Kestex asked, their membrane now cycling through shades of purple that indicated deep professional embarrassment. "Yes," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "It's a fundamental part of human biology, which would have been obvious if anyone had bothered to check the updated medical databases I sent last week." Talaxia's tentacles uncurled slightly. "We may have been too focused on the emergency protocols to check recent updates, and too busy watching old Earth TV shows," John added with a grin. Dr. Still's crystalline form dimmed slightly. Perhaps Gray's Anatomy was not the most reliable medical reference. Throughout the station, the emergency lights finally stopped flashing. The AI made a new announcement. "Medical alert canceled. Situation classified as cultural misunderstanding. All human diplomatic personnel released from quarantine." "I suggest," Ambassador Thompson said, speaking for the first time, "that we update the station's medical database immediately to prevent any future misunderstandings." Dr. Martinez nodded. "I'll conduct a proper series of lectures on human biology for all medical staff, though I doubt any future sessions will be quite as memorable as this one." Kestex approached John, their membrane now showing the subtle patterns that indicated sincere apology. "Representative Chen, we are deeply sorry for any distress we caused you." "It's okay," John said kindly. "Though I hope you'll understand if I request a different nurse for my next physical." This actually got a laugh from the alien medical staff, their various appendages and surfaces displaying colors of amusement. Even Talaxia's tentacles relaxed into a more casual pattern. "I think," Dr. Martinez said with a smile, "this is a perfect example of why we need more cultural exchange programs in medical training. Now, who's ready to learn about human biology? And this time, we'll use actual medical texts, not TV shows." The alien doctors gathered around eagerly, their earlier panic transformed into professional curiosity. Through the medical bay windows, the last of the emergency response team could be seen dispersing, though a few were clearly still trying not to laugh. News traveled fast on Space Station Omega-7, especially when it involved an emergency quarantine of the entire human diplomatic corps. By the next station day cycle, the story had spread through every deck, section, and social circle. Nurse Kestex couldn't walk down a corridor without other medical staff stopping to ask questions about humans. Their membrane had settled into a permanent shade of embarrassed purple, but they were trying to handle the attention professionally. "Is it true you thought it was a medical emergency?" a young Braxian medical intern asked during lunch break in the station's cafeteria. "The situation was more complicated than that," Kestex replied diplomatically, pushing their food cubes around with an appendage. At a nearby table, John Chen was enjoying his newfound celebrity status among the station's residents. Various alien species kept approaching him with questions about human biology, though most were too polite to ask directly about the incident that had triggered the station-wide alert. "I hear you're famous in xenobiology circles now," Ambassador Thompson said, sitting down next to him with her coffee. "The video of our medical staff running around yelling 'State' has gone viral on the galactic net." John groaned. "Please tell me you're joking." "I wish I was," she replied with a smile. "Though I have to admit, it's doing wonders for human-alien relations. Nothing brings species together quite like shared embarrassment." The station's medical database had been thoroughly updated, with Dr. Martinez's comprehensive guide to human biology, now required reading for all medical staff. The guide included a special section titled "Common Misunderstandings to Avoid," with the previous day's incident listed as Case Study Number 1. Chief Medical Officer HFY had turned the experience into a learning opportunity. They organized daily seminars on xenobiology, with a special focus on not making assumptions about any species' anatomy. Just because something looks unusual to us, HFY explained to a packed lecture hall, their tentacles now arranged in a professional teaching pattern, doesn't mean it's a medical emergency. The station's AI had also been updated. Its translation protocols now included better handling of biological terms, though it still occasionally announced historical medical incident reference whenever John walked past certain sensors. Kistex, determined to learn from their mistake, had thrown themselves into studying human medicine. Their quarters were now filled with actual medical textbooks, and they had removed all Earth entertainment shows from their research materials. "I hope you know," John said, stopping by the medical bay one day, "that nobody blames you for what happened. You were just trying to be thorough." Kistex's membrane shifted to a more relaxed blue. "Thank you, Representative Chen. Though I still wish I had checked Dr. Martinez's updated materials first." "Well, your research paper is apparently very popular," John noted with a grin. Kistex had indeed written a detailed paper titled "Understanding Human Baseline," a guide to avoiding medical misunderstandings. It had quickly become required reading at several galactic medical academies, though most readers assumed the opening case study was a hypothetical example. Even the Galactic Medical Ethics Board had taken notice. They issued new guidelines for treating newly contacted species, specifically mentioning the importance of thorough cultural and biological briefings before medical examinations. "The funny thing is," Dr. Martinez commented during one of her lectures, "this whole incident probably did more to advance interspecies medical understanding than a year of formal diplomatic meetings would have." As if to prove her point, the station had seen a surge in cultural exchange programs. Medical staff from all species were now eager to learn about each other's biology, though they were much more careful about checking their references first. "Just promise me one thing," John said to Kistex as they passed in the corridor. "Next time you have questions about human anatomy, I'll consult the proper medical texts." Kistex finished, their membrane showing the subtle patterns of a smile. And definitely not WebMD. 3 months after the infamous human anatomy incident, Space Station Omega-7 had settled into a new normal. The medical bay, once the site of interstellar misunderstanding, had become a model for cross-species medical care. Nurse Kistex, surprisingly, had emerged as the station's leading expert in human physiology. Their initial embarrassment had transformed into dedicated expertise, and they now conducted regular training sessions for new medical staff. "Remember," Kistex told a group of fresh medical interns, their membrane showing confident professional colors, "always check the updated medical database first. And no, watching human medical shows does not count as research." The interns' various appendages and surfaces showed colors of amusement. The story of Kistex's first human patient had become something of a legend in medical training circles. John Chen still visited the medical bay occasionally, though now it was usually to help with training demonstrations. He and Kistex had developed an unlikely friendship, often sharing meals in the station's cafeteria while discussing cultural differences. "You know," John said during one such lunch, "I heard they're using your experience in diplomatic training now too. How a medical misunderstanding led to better interspecies relations." Kistex's membrane flickered with embarrassed pride. "At least something good came from my mistake. Though I still can't believe I thought. Well, you know. Could be worse," John grinned. "At least you didn't base your diagnosis on old episodes of House." The medical bay's AI had been completely reprogrammed. Its new translation protocols were so thorough that it had become a model for other stations. Cultural context considered, it would announce proudly before making any medical translations. Dr. Martinez's comprehensive guide to human biology had become required reading throughout the sector. She had even added a chapter called Common Assumptions and How to Avoid Them, which began with the now famous line, "Just because it looks unusual doesn't mean it's an emergency." The station received its first real test when a new species joined the galactic community. The Xylops, a race of color-changing geometric shapes, arrived for their first diplomatic mission. Initial medical scans show unusual energy patterns, a young doctor reported to Kistex, who was now head of xenobiology training. "And what do we do first?" Kistex asked calmly. "Check their provided medical database," the doctor replied promptly, "and not jump to conclusions about unfamiliar anatomy." "Exactly," Kistex said, their membrane showing proud teacher patterns. "We've learned that lesson rather memorably." Chief Medical Officer Talaxvia, watching from nearby, had their tentacles arranged in a pattern of approval. The station's reputation for handling new species with understanding and respect had grown considerably. Even the crystal doctor who had once suggested quarantine procedures for normal human anatomy now led seminars on avoiding rush judgments in xenomedicine. "The true mark of medical wisdom," they would chime to their students, "is knowing when to admit you don't know something." As Kistex prepared to examine their first Xylop patient, they felt none of the panic that had marked their first human examination. Instead, they carefully reviewed the provided medical information, consulted with the species' own medical staff, and double-checked their translation protocols. "You've come a long way," John commented, watching from the doorway. "Remember when you thought I needed emergency surgery?" "Please don't remind me," Kistex said, their membrane showing gentle embarrassment. "Though I suppose every medical professional has to learn somehow. I just happened to learn in the most memorable way possible." As the new Xylop patient entered the medical bay, Kistex's membrane shifted to its professional medical colors. They had learned their lesson well. Every species was unique, assumptions were dangerous, and sometimes the best medical care began with 3 simple words. "Please explain yourself." The station's AI made one final announcement for the day. "Notice: cultural understanding levels at all-time high. Current emergency alert status: 0. Reason for improvement: human anatomy incident of last quarter." End report. John and Kistex shared a knowing look. Sometimes the best lessons came from the most embarrassing mistakes.